They chose the wrong man to betray. He was quiet, calm, almost invisible, the perfect target, at least in the eyes of his wife and best friend. But behind his silence, a storm was waiting. One evening, one dance, one step across the line, and the fall began, one they walked into with smiles. While she laughed in another man's arms, he memorized every detail. While his friend played loyal, he installed cameras. They thought they'd get away with it, thought he'd just break and walk away. But he didn't. He stayed. And he started moving. No scenes, no warnings, just cold precision, camera by camera, word by word. They wanted a game without rules, and got a show the whole country watched. Some get revenge with fists. He used a microphone, video recordings, and a lawsuit. And if you think it ended there, it didn't. That was only the first move. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watch this video from. Now, let's get started. Penelope and I had a ritual we rarely missed. The last Friday of every month was reserved for dinner and a night out with our longtime friends, Chris and Aria Collins. That night, we'd picked Twilight Terrace for our monthly get-together. We uncorked a bottle of wine, shared familiar laughs, and leaned into the comfortable rhythm of our usual banter. Once we wrapped up dinner, we made our way to Savory Haven to continue the night with drinks and dancing. Penelope may have been a little heavy-handed with the cocktails, but her confidence was unshaken. She looked stunning, absolutely glowing. She wore a bold red dress that clung to every curve, leaving little to the imagination. Risky, yes, but undeniably captivating. I couldn't help but feel like I'd hit the jackpot. We let the music carry us, dancing freely and carelessly, swapping partners here and there just for the fun of it. At one point, I found myself dancing with Aria, while Penelope laughed and twirled in Chris's arms. Everything was lighthearted, until a commotion near the front of the bar caught our attention. "What's going on over there?" Aria asked, craning her neck for a better look. The DJ's voice broke through the speakers with dramatic flair, announcing that Joshua McQuarrie, the Strikers' new quarterback, had just walked in. A chorus of cheers and whistles erupted as he entered, carrying himself with the easy charm of someone used to being admired. Chris let out a long whistle. "Well, that's unexpected," he remarked. Aria's eyes widened as they locked on McQuarrie. "He can visit my bedroom anytime he likes," she said with a purr. Penelope, already mid-sip, smirked. "Count me in," she added with a wink. Chris didn't look amused, and I felt a prick of annoyance rise in my chest. "Ladies, just a reminder, you're both married," I said, trying to mask my irritation with a joking tone. Penelope shrugged like it was nothing. "Don't pretend you've never imagined flirting with someone famous." "Honestly, I haven't," I shot back. Aria leaned in, her grin playful. "Don't worry, Michael. Once you publish that book, people will be lining up to drool over you." Penelope rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, please, spare us." Just then, she jolted upright, her eyes lighting up. "No way, he's walking over here." I turned to see what she meant. Sure enough, McQuarrie had left his booth and was making his way through the crowd, casually signing napkins and posing for selfies as fans swarmed around him. On screen he looked big, but in person he was even more imposing, grinning like he owned the room. When he reached us, I could feel my stomach tighten. "Mind if I borrow your beautiful wife for a dance?" he asked, his voice deep and assured. Everything in me wanted to say yes, I minded. But Penelope was already rising, her hand in his, before I could speak. She led him onto the dance floor like this was what she'd been waiting for all night. They started off playfully, laughing and spinning to an upbeat song, but then the tempo dropped. The DJ switched to a slow number, and suddenly Penelope was in his arms like they'd known each other for years. My fists clenched beneath the table. "This is ridiculous," Chris muttered beside me. Penelope was lost in laughter, pressing herself into Macquarie like there was no one else in the room. Then I saw it, his hand sliding lower, fingers brushing against her backside. That was enough. I stood up abruptly, fury bubbling in my voice. "Take your damn hand off my wife." Macquarie turned, giving me a once-over, clearly unimpressed. "It's a free country. You got a problem?" Penelope met my glare with a weary smile. "Michael, don't make a scene." My heart was pounding. "You're really okay with this?" I demanded. Macquarie just chuckled. "Maybe if you satisfied her, she wouldn't be here dancing with me," he said coolly. And that was the final straw. I shoved him hard, not caring that he had the build of a linebacker. He shoved back, and I stumbled into a nearby bar stool. Everything exploded. I threw a punch that caught his jaw, pain shooting through my hand on contact. He staggered slightly, then retaliated with a solid hit to my mouth. The taste of blood hit my tongue. We grappled, crashing into the bar, knocking over glasses and bottles as people shouted around us. Somewhere in the chaos, he drove a knee into my stomach and I collapsed, gasping for air. The noise was deafening, cheers, gasps, screams, and I couldn't tell which side the crowd was on. Out of nowhere, Chris stormed into the fray, grabbing Macquarie and pulling him back with force I didn't know he had. Usually the calm and collected coach, Chris now looked ready to explode. His jaw was tight and his eyes burned. "You think you can just touch another man's wife and get away with it?" he barked, launching a punch at Macquarie. Macquarie ducked and countered with an elbow to Chris's ribs. Chris winced, but didn't back down. He grabbed Macquarie's collar and yanked him forward until their faces were inches apart. That's when the bouncers surged through the crowd, pushing people aside to get to us. One of them hauled Macquarie back, while another pointed directly at our group. "All of you, outside, now." We spilled onto the street, the cold air slicing through the heat of adrenaline. "Appreciate it, man," I said to Chris, wiping the blood from my lip. He exhaled heavily, running a hand through his hair. That went south fast. He helped a dazed Arya into the back of his Dodge. Penelope stumbled as she tried to get in beside them, nearly hitting the pavement. I caught her just in time, wrapping an arm around her to steady her. "Jesus, Penelope," I muttered, keeping her upright as she swayed. "I'm fine," she slurred, her hand making a feeble motion through the air like she was brushing off concern. She was anything but fine. I let out a slow breath, opened the passenger side door, and gently guided her into the seat. She collapsed into it like gravity had doubled, exhaling as though she'd just crossed a finish line. The car ride was silent, save for her erratic breathing, uneven inhales and shaky exhales filling the stillness. Her head rested against the window pane, strands of hair plastered to her damp skin. The scent of alcohol clung to her like a second skin, along with the unmistakable trace of Macquarie's cologne. My hands tightened around the steering wheel until my knuckles turned ghost white. I wanted to say something, anything, to shake her out of this fog, to drag the truth out of her. But what would it change? She wouldn't remember. Or worse, she'd pretend she didn't. When we pulled into the driveway, I cut the engine. I walked over to her side and opened the door. She stirred slightly, half-heartedly pushing me away. "I can do it," she muttered. Then, without warning, she sagged against me. I caught her and slung her arm over my shoulders, steadying her as we moved toward the house. Once inside, she kicked off her shoes and collapsed, face down onto the couch without a word. I stood there, just looking at her. My wife. The woman who once swore I was her whole world, the same woman whose arms, not long ago, had held someone else. My throat tightened, and bitterness crept up like bile. I flipped off the lights and left her where she lay, letting the dark do what it could to dull the ache. The next morning, I sat alone at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The ticking of the wall clock filled the space with a slow, relentless rhythm. Then I heard her footsteps, slow, dragging, unsure. Penelope shuffled in, wrapped in the throw blanket from the couch. Her bare feet made barely a sound on the tile. Her hair was a tangled mess, makeup smeared in ghostly streaks under heavy-lidded eyes. She flinched at the light streaming through the window, pressing her fingers to her temples like they were holding her skull together. She poured herself a glass of water, took a small sip, then let out a long, shaky breath. At last, she turned toward me. "What even happened last night?" she croaked, voice thick with sleep and regret. I didn't answer right away, just lifted my mug and took a slow drink, studying her. She scowled slightly. "Why are you looking at me like that?" I placed the cup down with deliberate care. "You really don't remember?" Her eyes went wide. "Wait. Oh my God. What happened to your face?" I let out a low, humorless chuckle. "You seriously don't remember," I said again. Something in my voice must have landed, because she straightened, suddenly more alert. "Michael, come on," she said, trying to sound reasonable. "You know how I get when I drink too much. I sometimes blank out." "You black out often," I said, the words coming out flat and sharp. Her face hardened. "So what? I'm a drunk now? Just because I went out and had a little fun?" I exhaled slowly through my nose, keeping my tone even. "You were dancing with Macquarie, letting him touch you, and when I stepped in, you told me not to make a scene." She groaned and dragged her hands down her face. "Seriously, Michael? You're acting like I cheated or something." The way she said it, like it was trivial, like it didn't even matter, hit harder than anything else. I watched her closely, hoping for even the slightest hint of shame. But it wasn't there. Just that same irritated look, like I was the one blowing things out of proportion. I pushed my chair back, the wooden leg scraping loudly against the floor. I grabbed my keys and shoved them into my pocket. "I've got to head in." I just pulled one arm through my jacket and stepped onto the porch when I heard the crunch of tires in the gravel. A red Dodge pulled into the drive, Chris's. He stepped out, a Tupperware container in hand, rolling up his sleeves with an easy motion. "Hey," he said, nodding toward the house. "Aria made some soup for Penelope. Thought she might need it." I looked at the container, then up at him. His expression was neutral, unreadable, but familiar. "That's thoughtful of her," I said quietly. He gave me a long look. "How's the jaw?" "Sore," I admitted. "You?" He flexed his fingers with a faint crack. "I'll manage." I let out a breath. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. Just something in between. We stood there in silence for a moment, both of us still carrying the weight of the night before. Chris had been there, in the middle of it all, trading punches, getting bruised right alongside me. He'd always had my back. "That whole thing was a disaster," he said eventually. "Yeah," I replied. "It really was. But I had deadlines to meet. The paper didn't care about personal drama. I was still wearing last night like a second skin, but work was at least something I could control." Chris stayed behind with Penelope. I didn't think twice. He was like a brother, someone I trusted implicitly. So I left. But just a few blocks away, it hit me. I'd left without my press badge. I made a quick U-turn, tires screeching a bit as I sped back toward the house. I pulled into the driveway too fast, shut off the car, and jogged up the steps with my keys ready. Then I heard them. Voices. I stopped. Through the cracked kitchen window, I saw them. Chris and Penelope. They were in the middle of something heated. Chris had his back to me, shoulders tense and squared. Penelope stood in front of him, arms crossed tight, her face drawn and defensive. "I don't know what you want from me," she snapped, voice sharp with irritation. "I was drunk, okay?" Chris replied in a tone softer than hers, but laced with steel. "That doesn't make it excusable, Penelope." "You're making a big deal out of nothing," she scoffed, rolling her eyes. That's when I stepped in, making my presence known. The instant Penelope noticed me, her body went rigid, like a child caught with a hand in the cookie jar. Chris turned to face me slowly. His expression was unreadable, deliberately neutral. "What's happening here?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He glanced at Penelope, then locked eyes with me. "Just reminding her she owes you a little respect," he said, calm but clipped. It was a plain statement, logical even, but the delivery didn't sit right. The way he said it, it felt rehearsed, like he was watching to see how I'd react, testing the waters. I studied him for a beat. This was Chris, my ride or die, the guy who'd had my back through bar fights and emergency room visits. Why would he lie to me now? I forced myself to push the doubt aside. "Thanks," I said, "but she's my wife. I'll deal with it." He held my gaze a moment longer before giving a short nod and stepping back. "Yeah, got it. Whatever you say." Then he brushed past me and walked out. Penelope didn't bother to watch him go. She stood there, arms folded, jaw clenched, like she was daring me to start an argument. "All right," I said. "It kills me to watch you do this to yourself." She sighed, sharp and impatient. "I already told you, I was drunk." "You're always drunk," I snapped back. Her eyes sparked with anger. "So now I'm an alcoholic?" "Tell me you're not," I shot back. She gave a bitter, mocking laugh and shook her head. "Maybe if I didn't feel like I was constantly under pressure, I wouldn't need to drink so much." I let out a dry, humorless chuckle. "Perfect. So, it's my fault now?" "Actually? Yeah." She stepped closer, pointing a finger at me like a weapon. "You moved your sick father into our home without even asking me how I felt about it. I'm the one tiptoeing around, trying not to wake him, listening to his groans from the guest room. I'm the one watching our money vanish into his care while you sit here pretending to be a writer." I clenched my jaw, holding back everything I wanted to say. "I hired a nurse, Penelope. She handles everything. He's not even in the main part of the house. How exactly is this ruining your life?" Her arms wrapped around herself even tighter, doubling down. "It's the cost, Michael. That nurse is bleeding us dry, and for what? You bring in pennies with those articles. And your precious book. How long has it been? Maybe it's time you stopped playing the tortured artist and actually earned a real paycheck." Her words struck something deep in me. "I am earning," I said evenly. "I pay for this house. I pay for you. I write every single day. Maybe instead of tearing me apart, you could try supporting me for once." She rolled her eyes, dismissive. "You want support? Then finish something." Before I could fire back, my phone rang, slicing through the tension. I checked the screen. My editor. "Where are you?" I exhaled and tightened my grip on the phone. "This conversation isn't over," I said, already moving toward the door. She didn't stop me, didn't ask where I was going or when I'd be back. She just stood there, arms locked across her chest, lips pressed into a thin line. I looked at her, really looked. This was the woman I used to laugh with, the one I held close on sleepless nights. And now? She felt miles away, a stranger across a chasm we couldn't seem to cross. But even with the drinking, the constant arguments, the chaos of last night, I still loved her. Some part of me still believed we weren't beyond saving, that maybe we could patch the cracks, because marriage isn't something you toss aside when it gets hard. And I wasn't ready to quit. Not yet. The newsroom was buzzing as usual, phones ringing, keyboards tapping, voices blending into an electric hum. I walked in with the weight of the morning still hanging off my shoulders, but I shoved it down. Work was simple, familiar. Here, things had rules. "Michael, my office, now." I hadn't even set down my bag when Francisco Novak, my editor, called me in. His tone was sharp, no nonsense. I stepped into his office and closed the door behind me. He got right to it. "Got a piece for you." He pushed a manila folder across the desk. I picked it up and flipped it open. Joshua McQuarrie. My stomach turned. "You want me to interview him?" I kept my voice even as I spoke. Across the desk, Francisco reclined slightly, his gaze locked onto mine with laser focus. Right now, he was the center of the sports world, the man everyone wanted to talk to, and scoring this one-on-one would be a huge win for the paper. He believed I was the only one who could make it happen. I let out a slow breath, fingers tightening around the folder I held. "I'm not taking this," I said quietly. Francisco's eyebrows lifted. "What do you mean you're not taking it? This is a big break, Michael." I shut the folder with a soft snap and slid it back toward him. "Get someone else." Silence swelled between us, thick and tense. Francisco studied me like I was a riddle he couldn't quite figure out. "What's going on?" The question just lingered. I exhaled through my nose. "I'm passing on this one." Francisco's shoulders sank slightly as he released a long sigh, slowly shaking his head. "You're serious?" "I am." "You don't get to be selective here," he said, leaning in. "I need you on this." "Well, I'm not doing it," I said, steady as ever. A dark look crossed his face. "You've got to be kidding me." "I'm not." His jaw tensed, and he leaned forward, elbows on the desk now. "I don't know what's gotten into you, but I can't have reporters walking out on assignments because they're not feeling up to it." Then came the final blow. "If you won't take the job, there's no spot for you on my team." I held his stare, a strange calm settling over me. I gave a single nod. "Then I'm out." There was a flicker in his expression. Surprise, maybe. But I didn't wait to see what he'd say next. I stood, grabbed my bag, and walked out of the newsroom without looking back. The door clicked shut behind me, and it hit like a wave. I was unemployed. No backup plan. No safety net. And yet, something inside me felt strangely light, like I was finally able to breathe again after weeks of suffocation. Later that evening, I followed the narrow path to the guest house, the porch steps creaking under my weight. Inside, the room was dim, soft shadows spilling across the space. My father sat in his recliner, a blanket draped over his knees. When he saw me, his eyes lifted, and there was something in them I couldn't quite name. Urgency, maybe, or fear. "Hey, old man," I said, trying for a smile. "How you doing?" He tried to respond, but the words came out broken and slurred. Frustration flashed in his eyes as his mouth failed him again. I stepped closer, resting a hand gently on his shoulder. "It's all right. Take your time." He shook his head and reached toward the side table, grabbing the notepad. His hand trembled as he scrawled a single shaky word. "She." My brow furrowed. "She?" His grip tightened around the pen. He tapped the page urgently, breathing shallow and quick. I followed his line of sight to the counter, where an empty mug and a folded dish towel sat. The nurse had visited earlier that day. "You mean the nurse?" I asked, voice low. He blinked once in reply. Though his hand still twitched, he didn't write another word. A chill settled in my chest. I tried to dismiss it. Maybe he was confused or just overwhelmed, but deep down, I knew better. Even with the stroke robbing him of speech, my dad's mind had stayed sharp. If he was working this hard to say something, it meant something. I couldn't ignore it. That night, I installed hidden cameras around the house. Small, discreet, tucked where no one would notice. If there was something he needed me to see, I had to find out. 2 days passed. I sat on my bed, laptop open in front of me, fingers hovering above the trackpad. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe carelessness. Maybe the nurse taking something. But when I finally clicked play, something inside me twisted. The video was grainy. A timestamp in the corner showed it was from the afternoon before. The guest house door was shut. Dad had been asleep. From its perch among the books, the living room camera had a clear, unmoving view of everything. That's when I saw him, Chris, standing in the middle of the room, wearing my robe. I blinked, stunned, trying to process what I was looking at, when something worse happened. Penelope stepped into view, barefoot, her hair damp as if she'd just gotten out of the shower. She said something, too soft for the mic, then laughed lightly and ran her hand across his chest. Chris smiled, tugged her closer by the waist, and then, right there on the living room table, they fell into each other like the rest of the world didn't exist. I went still, ice in my veins, my thoughts blank. This wasn't a drunken mistake. The way they moved, the comfort, the routine of it, it was practiced, familiar. My hands balled into fists before I even realized. The truth landed like a gut punch I never saw coming. Chris, the friend who'd had my back in every fight, the one I trusted with everything. The same guy I left behind with my wife when I had to work. That night at the bar, was that the real reason he jumped into the fight? Was it truly about defending me, or had something darker pushed him into it? Maybe he'd caught sight of Macquarie with Penelope and felt the same rush of rage I had. Maybe he wanted to be the only one close to her. I'd always believed he had my back, that he was fighting for me. But the reality was far more twisted. He'd been sleeping with my wife all along, betraying me behind my back. The video kept rolling, but I couldn't stomach another second. My hands were shaking as I slammed the laptop shut. A biting, icy fury curled up in my gut. That was all I needed. I got into my car and headed straight for Chris's place, no hesitation, the road a blur under my wheels. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my fingers went white. There was fire in my chest, burning hot, but beneath it sat something colder, a hollow ache that gnawed at me. When Arya opened the door, the truth was written all over her face, pale, puffy-eyed, distant. And she saw it in me too, the clenched jaw, the unsteady breaths. She didn't have to ask. Her voice came out cracked and thin. "You know?" I stepped inside, letting the door close behind me with a quiet click. "Did you?" I asked, my voice low, edged like glass. Tears welled up immediately. She didn't deny it. She didn't soften the blow. She just covered her mouth and gave the smallest, most broken nod. A tiny sob slipped through. "I only found out not long ago," she said, barely audible, her voice trembling. I didn't know how to tell you, Michael. I wasn't sure if you already knew or if—" She cut herself off, shaking her head like she couldn't finish the thought. I exhaled sharply, raking a hand through my hair. My chest felt like it was caving in. Chris, my best friend, Penelope, my wife, the two people I should have been able to trust most, and they'd been lying to us. Arya wiped at her face with unsteady hands, then looked at me with something wild and pained in her eyes. "We should make them pay," she said, her voice a whisper. I blinked. "What?" She swallowed hard, and something in her shifted. The grief morphed into something colder, harder. "We should hurt them the way they hurt us," she said as she stepped closer. Her voice dropped. "You and me." My heart hammered, not out of desire, but because everything suddenly became clear. I understood exactly what she was offering. I saw it in her face, in the way her hands reached without thinking, for comfort, for revenge. It would have been easy, the simplest path, a chance to get even. Chris and Penelope had already shattered everything. They'd destroyed the rules. But as I looked at Arya, really looked, I saw myself reflected in her, the pain, the betrayal, and I knew what needed to be said. "This isn't the answer," I told her softly. She looked at me, confused. "Michael, I know what they did," I interrupted, more composed now. "But this won't fix any of it. It won't make it go away." I shook my head. "It'll just make us like them." She let out a breath that sounded like it broke something in her, and her shoulders sagged, the anger melting away. I saw it then, the flicker of shame in her expression, the way her hands trembled slightly. She understood. I turned to the door, pausing with my hand on the handle. "They're not worthy of our respect," I said quietly. "But that doesn't mean we should give up our own." I walked out before she could reply. I didn't need to hear anything more. I already knew. This was far from over. Not even close. I kept recording. At first, it was just to confirm what I already suspected, to wipe away any shadow of doubt. But the more footage I watched, the more obvious it became. They weren't even bothering to hide anymore. Not from each other. Not in my house. Not even from my father. That thought haunted me. The way he'd scrawled "she" on that note. The urgency in his expression. He'd seen something. He knew. Maybe Penelope assumed his stroke had left him too broken to notice. Maybe she thought his words wouldn't make sense to anyone. But I knew my father. If he was trying to warn me, there was a reason. So I gave him a voice recorder. "Just press this button when they're here," I told him, placing it gently in his hand. His fingers trembled, but he held it like it meant everything. And when I went through the next round of recordings, I thought I knew what I'd find. More murmured conversations, hidden caresses, kisses stolen in corners they believed were safe. But what I saw was far worse. Chris, in my home. Again. Penelope lounged on the couch, wine glass in hand, laughing. Chris stood before her, grinning like an idiot. Then, he dropped to the floor on all fours. I froze, staring in disbelief. Penelope clapped, amused, like she was praising a child. Chris swayed his hips, crawling toward her like a dog. Then he barked. My stomach turned. He whimpered, rubbing his head against her knee, desperate for her attention. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a piece of chocolate. She dangled it in front of him with a smile. "Good boy," she said, her voice sickly sweet. Chris collapsed to the ground, eyes wide, jaw slack, like a mutt begging for mercy. I snapped the laptop shut so hard it echoed, my pulse drumming in my ears like a battle cry. This wasn't just some sleazy affair. It was worse, sickening, twisted. My gut churned. But now I had it all, the truth, the proof, and they were going to pay. Both of them. The gym was electric, packed wall to wall with fans buzzing like bees in a hive. The atmosphere cracked with energy as players jogged and bounced across the court, warming up for the big game. Squeaks of sneakers echoed off the floor. Whistles split the air like sirens. The scoreboard blinked to life. And then Chris strutted in. That swagger he wore like armor. It was all there, head high, that arrogant smirk, walking like he owned the damn place, like he hadn't just detonated his own life, like everything wasn't about to fall apart. I couldn't take my eyes off him, but I knew she was here too. Penelope. Perched in her usual spot high in the bleachers, one leg draped over the other like a queen on her throne, pretending like nothing had changed. She didn't look my way. Not yet. Maybe she thought I'd choke. Maybe she assumed I didn't have the spine. She was about to find out just how wrong she was. The pre-game press buzzed into motion. I slid into position with the rest of the media, mic steady in hand, as Chris made his way over. He barely glanced at me. Just another reporter in the scrum. Exactly what I wanted. I started slow. Softball questions, small talk to lower his guard. Then I dropped the bomb. "Chris," I said, voice steady, "what's your take on cheating, on the court, or in a marriage?" His mouth twitched. The grin faltered. His eyes snapped to mine, scanning, searching. He knew, but he wasn't ready to take off the mask. He tried to laugh it off. "That a real question?" "Dead serious," I said. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her react. Penelope shifted in her seat. Her spine went rigid, fingers gripping the armrest like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Her head jerked toward the court. She'd heard it. I pulled out my phone, tapped play. The speakers hissed. Then her voice spilled out, clear as day. "You know what's crazy? No one suspects a damn thing." Chris's voice followed. "I know. We've got 'em all fooled." Penelope again, casual, amused. "They think we're just sweet neighbors, happy little spouses. Chris chuckled. If only they knew what really goes down after the church socials. Penelope laughing. Too bad they never will. A beat of stunned silence gripped the gym like a vice. Then it exploded. Chris went pale. I turned in time to catch Penelope's mask crumble, her smirk dissolving into sheer panic. She bolted upright, eyes wide, like maybe she could stop the avalanche. And right on cue, the Jumbotron lit up. Chris's face filled every screen, on all fours, barking, groveling, tail wagging. The crowd gasped. Then the laughter came. Loud, ruthless. People howled. Beer cans flew through the air. The noise became a storm. Chris whirled around, staring at the monitors, watching himself lick Penelope's hand like a broken man. His voice cracked as he shouted toward the control booth, "Turn it off! Turn it off!" But it was too late. His players were frozen, wide-eyed. The refs shouted in vain, but the roar only grew louder. The game? Over before it even began. Chris stumbled backward, head jerking from screen to crowd to exit, like a trapped animal with nowhere left to run. His legacy? Gone. His reputation? Torched. Penelope didn't move. Couldn't. She was stuck in that moment, caught between denial and dread. And she knew. This was real. It was happening. Our eyes locked. I smiled. Because this wasn't the end. It was the first move. The next morning, I filed the divorce papers. No hesitation. No second thoughts. Penelope had chosen her side. She could keep it. But I wasn't finished. I wanted more than closure. I wanted consequences. So I sued him. Alienation of affection. North Carolina was one of the last states where it still held up. A brutal, old-school law that let you bleed someone dry for wrecking your marriage. Chris came in swinging. Attorneys, charm, the whole act. Tried to spin it as a momentary lapse, a single mistake. But the evidence didn't flinch. And that tape? That laugh? Unforgettable. The court ruled in my favor. Chris owed me. Big time. His career was already ash. No school wanted a disgraced coach who got caught playing dog for his mistress on the Jumbotron. Now his finances crumbled too. With the settlement check in hand, I packed my bags and moved in with my father. Free. Finally, I was free. No more grinding away to bankroll Penelope's insatiable retail therapy, her wine-soaked evenings of excess, or the so-called burden of a caregiver she insisted was too much to bear. I took over my father's care myself, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could breathe. I had stillness, clarity, and the creative spark I thought I'd lost. I chose to channel that into a new novel, and astonishingly, within just a month, it was finished. The words poured out of me like a storm breaking loose, fueled by everything I had suffered, driven by the sheer force of reclaiming control over my own story. The moment I typed the final sentence, it didn't just secure a publisher, it detonated in the literary world. The book was fierce, unfiltered, and brutally honest. A narrative steeped in betrayal, manipulation, and the delusion of a woman who thought she could juggle two men without consequences. Readers devoured it. Discussions ignited. The mask she wore disintegrated under the weight of those pages. Penelope wasn't merely the wrecking ball that shattered our marriage. She had become the villain immortalized in fiction, the storm's eye. Her lies were no longer hidden. They were laid bare in ink, visible to anyone who turned a page. And that moment wasn't the conclusion of my story. It was the true beginning. His story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you? Life often falls apart not from explosions, but from tiny cracks we stubbornly ignore. Subtle changes, words spoken with ease as if they mean nothing. And only when everything collapses does it become clear. Every unfinished moment, every smile dodging questions, was part of a single chain. But what do you do when you realize that trust is fragile glass that can no longer be mended? when the game of tolerance turns into betrayal and the word love becomes an empty sound? How much time does it take to see the truth hidden behind apologies and half-truths? And what remains when there's nothing left to save? Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watch this video from. Now let's get started. My name's Gregory. For most of my marriage, I believed everything was steady. Not out of naivety, but because I made a conscious decision to trust. I thought love thrived when given freedom. I never felt the need to track locations or demand logins. To me, genuine love wasn't about surveillance. Julia and I had been in each other's lives for 8 years, 5 of those as husband and wife. She had her own rhythm, poised, independent, a powerhouse in her fast-paced marketing career. She drew people in without effort. Her charisma was effortless and well-calibrated, and she wasn't hesitant to wield it. That had never been a problem for me. I never equated jealousy with love, only with fear dressed up as control. But gradually, the dynamic began to shift. Nothing blatant, just small inconsistencies that began to layer themselves. Julia started extending boundaries. Professional events melted into increasingly late returns. 2 a.m. became routine. Her explanations remained elusive. The event ran late, she'd say. You know how these things go. Anytime I brought it up, she'd glide past it, smooth, practiced. She had a way of flipping the narrative until I was questioning myself, and each time, I backed off. Then Raymond entered the picture. She mentioned him in passing as we were prepping dinner, said he was pitching in on a new campaign launch. Just someone I used to know, she said casually, dicing onions like it held no weight. I raised a brow. What kind of used to know? Her expression didn't waver. My ex-husband, she answered. I froze, a wooden spoon suspended halfway to the pot. Your ex-husband? I echoed. She chuckled lightly, unfazed. Oh, Gregory, don't overthink it. That was forever ago. We're just friends now. Apparently, he ran a creative agency. One of her clients had contracted his firm, and now their paths had crossed again. You're not going to make this into some big thing, are you? She added lightly. I didn't. I should have. But I didn't. At the time, I still held on to the belief that mature love could coexist with remnants of the past. That history didn't have to mean danger. I told myself Raymond was just a name from a closed chapter, and I didn't want to be the guy who flinched at ghosts. That was my error, because Raymond wasn't just history. He was suddenly very current, and I was about to see how far I'd let myself be fooled. Within a few months, his name began surfacing more often. Over coffee, Raymond steering the rebrand. At lunch, Raymond asked me to review the messaging. In casual chatter, Raymond had me laughing so hard today. You get the picture. At first, I played it cool, nodded, sipped, kept my responses neutral. Sounds good. But there was something in her voice when she said his name. It had a rhythm, like she was probing my reaction. One evening, we were on the couch watching some forgettable show. She kept smiling down at her phone. I glanced sideways. Who's that? I asked. She angled her screen away, just barely. Just Raymond. He's being funny. I paused the TV. So now you two talk outside of work? She gave me a look, a little amused, a little superior. It's harmless chatting, Gregory. Don't spiral. I wanted to challenge her. I didn't. Later that night, when the house was still and she'd fallen asleep, I sat at the kitchen table alone, the silence pressing in. I wasn't angry, not yet, but I could feel something inside me shifting. A boundary was beginning to take shape. Then, a week later, that boundary got tested. We were washing dishes side by side when she brought it up like it was no big deal. Raymond's hosting a weekend at his lake house, just the team, bit of bonding, some drinks, super low-key. I turned off the tap and reached for a towel. You're planning to go? She gave a casual shrug. Yeah, I haven't had a proper break in ages. I need it. I looked at her carefully. So, you're going to spend the weekend at your ex-husband's lake house? Her expression didn't flinch. It's not just the two of us, Gregory. It's a group trip, for work. I narrowed my eyes. You could have declined. She raised her eyebrows, her tone tightening. And why would I? We're adults. Nothing inappropriate is happening. Raymond and I are friends. That's it. I exhaled slowly. You keep repeating that, but it doesn't feel like nothing. You light up when you talk about him. And I don't even think you realize it. She went still for a second, dish in hand. You're exaggerating. I haven't done anything wrong. Not yet, I said. But you're pushing the edge, testing how much you can get away with before I finally say enough. She tilted her head. So what? Is this your line in the sand? I nodded, calm but firm. If you go, I said, drying the last plate, don't come back. She turned to face me, dish frozen in midair, speechless. You're serious? I asked, my tone even, steady. No raised voice, no visible reaction. I didn't move. She gave me that familiar crooked smirk, the one she wore when she thought I was being overly sensitive. Oh, come on, Gregory, don't be dramatic. This isn't some high school fling. No, I answered, setting the plate gently on the table. It's a marriage, and right now, you're steering it straight off a cliff. She looked at me like she was trying to decipher a puzzle, waiting to see if this was just another performance she could breeze past with charm. But not this time, and something in her face shifted when that sank in. She didn't believe me. Her eyes betrayed that, loud as a shout. The morning she was meant to leave, she behaved like it was any ordinary day, humming as she packed, carefully selecting outfits, taking her time with her makeup. She'd sneak glances at me here and there, likely waiting for a protest, an emotional plea. I gave her nothing. Just sat at the table, sipping my coffee and scrolling through my phone like I was checking headlines. Distant, unmoved. Eventually, she leaned in the doorway and asked, You're really going to throw this all away over a weekend? I didn't even glance up. If you go through that door, we're finished. She crossed her arms. This is ridiculous, Gregory. It's just a few days. No, it's not. I rose, brushed past her, and opened the front door wide. She blinked, caught off guard. So that's it? That's how it ends? That's exactly how. She didn't respond right away. Then, finally, she rolled her suitcase toward the exit. Before stepping out, she kissed my cheek, light, dismissive, like I was being childish. You'll come to your senses, she said as she left. I watched as she loaded her bag into the Uber and got in. She didn't even glance back. Once the car disappeared down the street, I grabbed my phone and called a locksmith. He showed up less than an hour later. While he worked on the locks, I moved from room to room, boxing up her belongings. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just focused. Calm. Clothing, cosmetics, novels. Everything of hers got packed away and sealed. I had it all shipped to her sister Melissa. Not her parents. They'd call, ask questions. Melissa would get it. She'd keep quiet. Next, I called my attorney. I want to file for divorce, I said, my voice flat. I wasn't out for payback. I didn't want an apology. I wanted out. I wanted clarity. Peace. Julia returned earlier than I thought. I figured she'd be back late Sunday. But Saturday afternoon, my phone buzzed. A motion alert from the front camera. I was in a meeting. I glanced at the screen and saw her standing there, suitcase in hand, trying the door. I stepped into the hallway and watched her on the live feed. She jiggled the handle, then again. Her expression shifted. Confusion, disbelief, irritation, as if the house itself had betrayed her. Then she pulled out her phone. It rang a second later. Gregory, she said, her voice tight. Why can't I get inside? I had the locks changed, I replied, tone neutral. There was a pause. You did what? I told you, walk out that door, and it's done. She laughed, brittle and incredulous. You're being crazy. Can we just talk? There's nothing to say. Your things are at Melissa's. The papers will come next week. Wait, are you really divorcing me? Yes. I could hear her breath quicken, fast, ragged. Then she tried a softer tone. Please, let's just talk. I didn't even stay the whole weekend. I came back early. That was your call, I said, just like leaving was. Gregory, don't do this. I ended the call. She tried again. 3 times. I let them all ring through. Then came the texts. This is insane. You're wrecking everything over a short trip? You're being immature. I didn't reply. The camera showed her later, sitting on the porch steps, hunched over, phone in hand. She looked like someone who finally understood the control had slipped from her grasp, and for the first time in a long while, I felt still. Not triumphant, not enraged, just done. Eventually, she left. That night, I silenced my phone. I didn't need to hear her unraveling more than I already had. Whatever story she had been telling herself, we weren't in it together anymore. I'd stepped out. But sometime after midnight, I noticed a voicemail. Just one. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering for a second, then I tapped play. Her voice came through, quiet, raw, like she'd been crying for hours. Gregory, please. I didn't know how to say it earlier. I messed up. You were right. About Raymond. It wasn't a harmless invite. He wasn't just extending a hand to be kind or trying to make everyone feel included. Yes, he invited others, but now I can see the truth. I was the one he was after from the beginning. Back then, I thought I had control. I really believed I was the one in charge. Her voice trembled as she spoke, footsteps echoing softly across the porch. He waited until I had enough drinks in me. That's when he isolated me. I never meant to stay after the others left. It wasn't planned. I swear it wasn't. Then came the silence, followed by a gut punch. He recorded everything. I didn't even realize until the next morning. He showed me the video himself, swore it would stay hidden, unless I said anything. That's how he's keeping me quiet. I stood motionless in the kitchen, listening as her voice unraveled. She said he had gone dark. He knew the game was over. I'm scared, Gregory. I didn't want this, she whispered before her voice cracked into sobs, words spilling in fragments. Please don't leave me in this. I didn't know what I was doing. I made a mistake. But I need you now. Please, just come outside. And with that, the message ended. I looked at the front door, then to the window. There she was, again, pacing like a ghost on the porch, gripping her phone like it was the only thing holding her together. But I didn't move. Instead, I picked up mine, opened our chat, and typed, "You made your choice. Live with it." Then I hit block and went to bed. Sunday passed in complete silence. I shut her out completely. Phone, blocked, email, deleted, social media, gone without a trace. By Monday morning, I walked into work like nothing had happened. Fresh clothes, hot coffee, clear head. Around noon, my lawyer sent over the finalized divorce documents. I signed and sent them back that day. Tuesday brought the aftershocks. Her sister Melissa reached out first. She's not doing well. Please talk to her. I didn't answer. Then came a few mutuals from back in the day. They tried to soften things. She made a mistake. Don't throw it all away over one night. If you ever loved her, at least hear her out. I didn't bother reading past the first few lines. None of them knew the full story. They hadn't seen what I'd swallowed over the years. They weren't there when I warned her again and again. They didn't know I was the one who quietly picked up her messes behind the scenes. Eventually, Julia moved back in with her parents. Melissa wouldn't let her stay. Her father, strict and old-fashioned, never liked how close she stayed to Raymond, even during her marriage. Word was, he was furious. Julia tried to spin the whole thing, claimed I overreacted, that it was just a trip. But a few days later, her mother called. Calm, steady, thoughtful. "Gregory, I'm not trying to make things right," she said gently. "I just want you to know, we get it. You didn't deserve this, and we're sorry." I thanked her. That was the last I ever heard from them. As for Raymond, the second he caught wind that Julia might go to the police, that she had started talking, he vanished, deleted all his accounts, quit his job, cut ties with everyone. When things got serious, he bolted, and Julia had gambled everything on him. I kept moving forward. Almost a year has passed. People still ask sometimes, co-workers, distant acquaintances, who only heard pieces. "What happened with you and Julia?" I just shrug. "Didn't work out." And leave it at that. I don't need to relive it. I already lived it, every painful second. The divorce went through smoothly, no court fights, no screaming matches. She signed the papers without argument. Maybe she knew it was over long before she ever stepped back through that door. Maybe she knew the moment her key didn't fit in the lock. There was no big scene, no final plea that could undo what she had done. She crossed a line I told her she couldn't, and this time I didn't cave. I think that's what rattled her most. Not my silence, not the end of the relationship, but the fact that I didn't shout, didn't beg, didn't chase. I just left. She kept trying afterward. New phone numbers, disposable email addresses, the same message in every form. "I didn't mean for this to happen. You were right. Please let me explain." I never replied. I wasn't waiting for some grand apology. I didn't need her to pay for it. I didn't need some teary moment of truth to make sense of it all. Because when she walked out that night, knowing full well what I'd said and what it meant, she gave me all the clarity I would ever need. People still ask sometimes, "Would you ever take her back?" No. Not because I'm bitter, but because I've learned to value myself. More than I did back then. I gave her patience. I gave her space. I gave her every chance to grow. And in the end, she gave everything to Raymond, a man who vanished the second life got complicated. I didn't explode. I woke up, and that made all the difference. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.